Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beyond the Practice podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Moss, and I'm with.
I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
And today's episode, we are going to be exploring the challenges that exist when we're talking about healing. Last episode, we got into our own personal stories that really, in our journey into the healing professions. And, we didn't extract or shine light on the challenges that existed, but those were by no means easy journeys to get to the point of we're going to start doing this practice. So, we're going to kind of get into the weeds of not so much our stories, but really what we see on a regular basis working with healing clients, and really what are the challenges that come up for people, and what is helpful to remember during your healing journey. So, this is something we probably have seen this week. I know even some of the conversations we've had off air, we've definitely seen some challenges over the course of
Yeah.
the last week. So, Sean, what's one of the, to get started, what are some of the things you've seen in practice in working with clients in the healing world and, healing, energy healing world and chiropractic world that you feel are like the biggest things people go through or challenges?
I think one of the biggest things people go through is that they often wait till there's a crisis.
Mm,
So somebody's really let something go pretty far, and then they're in a crisis state,
yeah.
and then they're often in a lot of pain or a lot of suffering,
Hmm.
and it can be like I feel like a very negative place for somebody to be in.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the way I view healing and pain now is that it's really like it's opening up doors, it's opening up layers for us to be able to really make better changes in our life.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, pain is coming from something that we're not taking action on. If somebody puts on too much weight, or they're not stretching their body, or they're not taking preventative care, and things start to break down. And there's reasons why we allow those things to just happen like that. So, like a lack of a lack of taking care of something ahead of time,
Yeah.
to allow something to hit to a crisis state, I think hits a major challenge for people, and oftentimes it creates this state of heightened emotion too.
Hmm. Yeah. And interesting. I know I've seen this, but you
Yeah.
talked about taking action with, the first step is like, admitting you got to go do something. And oftentimes I've seen people already feel the healing or experience some
Yeah.
of the healing by just the act of doing something about it, right? Like
Yeah.
they've come in for a first visit, and within the time between that first visit and the second visit, they're already reporting like, I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but I'm
Yeah.
already starting to feel better. Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a peace of mind that's so important, and I'm sure you've had this as well, where you've had different clients where maybe they have pain starting, or it's something that's
Yeah.
been ramping up over time, and they're like, "Oh my God, do I have cancer?" Or
Yeah.
it's like our minds can go to that negative state very easily,
Mhm.
and sometimes just being like, here's what's going on, here's what we need to do, here's the plan, let's get you
Yeah.
feeling better. It brings so much peace of mind to people.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, that is we're not, I'm not a therapist. My wife is actually a therapist, but you do have to like cultivate and
Yeah.
coddle the mind through the her healing
Yeah.
property, because the longer somebody's in this state, experiencing a state of ill health, imbalance, stuck pattern, whatever it may be, to some degree they get used to it. I've
Yeah.
seen where it's even if there is hope on the other side, sometimes people are so used to it they're not sure what life would be like. And I've definitely seen that challenge where people start to get well and you have to find a new experience. Like, I've seen clients who are on, per se, like disability, and disability is a whole nother ball game of like, I'm not working,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of existing to some degree, not everyone. And then throughout they start to get well and see healing and experience in a very positive way. That opens up a lot of doors of opportunity. Like, oh my gosh, what can my life be like now?
Yeah.
But that also can be like, oh my God, what could my life be like now? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to
Yeah.
take action and face? And so I think in us breaking this conversation down, like healing's not so simple. It's really, there's all
Yeah.
walks of life that are experiencing levels and degrees of stuckness and pain, and that journey isn't, it has its ups and downs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's huge opportunity in healing, and there's I think people oftentimes feel like healing something that they have to do.
Mm.
It's like brushing your teeth or something like that.
Yeah.
They go, I have to take care of this XYZ part of my body.
Mm.
And really it's a huge opportunity, because it's uh, correcting these things helps you to live at a higher quality of life and really get more enjoyment out of life.
Yeah.
And so often that as the body is brought to a better state of less muscle tension, of better movement,
Hmm.
all those things. It's like the person just mentally is in a higher frequency, if you will. They're
Yeah.
they're feeling more joyful. There's less depressed. Like chronic pain is really linked with depression.
Yeah.
And how many people have you seen who've had depression or anxiety that improved as their pain was getting better?
Totally. I mean, I think just that condition on our intake form,
Yeah,
from an energetic healing perspective and from a chiropractic perspective, it tries to encompass like the totality of what the situation is. And I would say, in 12 years in practice, the frequency of people checking anxiety and depression in conjunction with whatever else is through the roof, especially in the last 4 years.
yeah,
I think one of the biggest challenges in healing over the last 4 years I've personally witnessed, is I feel like the COVID years, if you will, has added like a +1 to everyone's life. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Where if your cup was like, let's say an overflowing cup, for
yeah,
example, is like your body being in a state of disease or overall illness or lack of health.
yeah,
People's cup is predominantly fuller and closer to that point
yeah,
where it's taking less stimulus to have a bad result. I guess that's how I would
yeah,
describe it.
yeah,
And anxiety and depression is like wildly through the roof because, then that's probably meant that's very many factors. It's the way we're
yeah,
living, it's the way we're communicating, it's being disconnected, it's we've had to deal with more illness and change and unknown. So there's many different factors. And I think part of the challenge of healing is that there is an unknown when you're in that state. When we're sick, sometimes, like, I'll admit it, I'm like a baby, and
yeah.
all you want is to like get through that moment, and you forget that most of the time I'm dreaming and producing and growing, and then all of a sudden you're in this quote healing crisis, and you're kind of just in this state of like, what do
You
I
just
do
want
now?
comfort, yeah.
um, which is
Yeah,
humbling and important as a
yeah,
person who works with other clients to recognize what that's like,
yeah,
so we can help support them. But I definitely see an increase in in everything over the course of the last couple years.
yeah. Yeah, I absolutely do as well. And, yeah, one of the things that's really important for us as healers too is, like, I think both you and I are good about this at this point because
Yeah.
we have to be, but, like, reaching out to others when you start to feel yourself getting worn down.
Mm,
Because as one thing I've learned about myself for my life to run the way it does, like I
mm,
have my chiropractic office, I have
yep.
my energy healing practice. I do all sorts of different things with the mystery school and the community here. And
Mhm.
then I have like I manage an Airbnb for my parents, and then I'm a landlord for a property. So
Yeah.
there's like a lot of balls in the air all the time, and
Yeah.
I know it's similar for you.
Yep.
And in order to for me to do that well, like I really have to take care of myself. I have to take care of I have to be able to meditate. I have to be able to do
Yeah.
my daily practices.
Yeah.
And if I feel myself starting to get sick, like I have to reach out for help quickly, because otherwise I can be down for a while.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, right. So all of that is internalized in this like busyness or stress almost,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I totally get that. I think that's a challenge in not just healing, but the consistent nature of the healer
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that, we're also working within everyone's stuff each day. So
Yeah.
there's a totally different energy to like working with people than running a business, right? Or
Yes.
even taking care of my daughter and
Yeah.
doing the errands. So there's a drastic shift that is, I don't want
Yeah.
to say it's like a compartmentalized life, but to some degree it's like the healing work. Um, there's almost nothing, no other place in my life that it requires the same demands, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the recognition of what you need is super important. And you mentioned earlier in this conversation, how staying like ahead of it. And I
Yeah.
think the collective, and I'm just saying this over like a decade, I love the younger generations of clients because there is something within, people in their 20s right now that they see the way the world has been and how
Yeah.
people have dealt with their health, and they're making different decisions. I
Yeah.
oftentimes now have people in their 20s, early 30s that are like, you know what, things aren't that bad, but I know if I don't do something about it, they're going
Yeah.
to get worse. And like, that's like probably the best attitude anyone could adopt in just taking care of yourself in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more people you take care of, the more you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I one of the things that I'm concerned about with today's like day and age too is how much stress kids are under,
Oh
because
yeah.
we do have this like generation of like 20 or 30-year-olds that are like really being much more proactive about their health.
Hmm.
And then we also have we have kids who are 10 years old that are under such high levels of stress that it's a concern. And
Yeah.
we're seeing the impacts that that has on children with anxiety disorders and different problems that didn't so much exist, I think,
Yeah. And
30 years ago.
yeah. And my wife and I have had a lot of discussions, and she's a therapist. She works with children, adolescents, and we're raising a daughter, and we're doing it through probably in a different way, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
in many. But we've also done a lot of study through anthroposophy and some of Rudolf Steiner's work. And really, I even like with the mystery school, it's like there's not a lot of direction towards children, because one of the most important parts of a child's development and their own healing for the first 7 years is just their parents' healing.
yeah,
The influence, like, they're really close to the light. They're not far from coming into this world. And they don't know what it's like to really feel alone yet.
yeah,
So, they're often experiencing the world so much quicker and to a degree that they're not ready for. And if the
yeah,
parents are doing that, or if the parents are carrying lots of anxiety and stress. I know, I love my mom, but she was more of an anxious person, and I know that I had some challenges with the anxiety experience through that early childhood, feeling that um, not unsafe, but just angsty feeling. So they pick up so often. I could
yeah,
see very early with my daughter, who's now almost 5, if my wife was getting worked up, within the first couple months of Ava's life, you could see she would get, if we were in the car and Lauren was getting stressed, the
yeah,
Ava would start to get stressed, and it would show up. And it's like, it's valuable to know that, but it also is like not a burden, but it's a cross to bear when you know that you kind of have that
yeah, the impact.
influence just by who you are. So, yeah, I mean, but it also means that our own healing is not just for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of the like our own healing, taking that journey on is one of the most beneficial things we can do for ourselves and for our family line too, for
Yeah,
everybody that you're in a relationship with. And we can call it like a quantum effect or whatever
yeah,
you want to call it. But anytime I make a huge shift within myself, like I have realization, I clear a big blockage.
yep,
There's something core within me is cleared that was
mhm,
before like a block, or made me see the world or people or even God in a more negative way than was actually true. Like when
right,
those things are cleared, it's like there's such a like quantum ripple that goes through the different people we're connected with,
mm,
and the world becomes brighter, your life becomes brighter, the people around you seem brighter. And it's not something I really understand, but
no,
it's something that I've experienced so many times.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think it almost sounds cliche, like, right? You say, "You're on my own healing is my healing for everyone else," but it's like
Yeah,
it does, not just from a deeper level that we don't understand, but from a modeling perspective, it's very true,
Yeah.
and that's we all learn so much more from experience than words or just reading and taking things in. We really learn from
Yeah.
people, and we all serve as these like little models that you can overcome something. And I think that's why you and I decided to share our story early in this journey, because it's so easy to look at somebody and just take in why they are that way. And
Yeah.
I think challenges as a healer, which this episode wasn't even going to be about, is not having any of that judgment upon what somebody's capable of or not capable of.
Yeah.
And I've seen this with my team over and over. If they think the person's not going to do x-rays, not going to commit, not going to pay, can't pay, whatever it may be, I've learned to like not have
Yeah.
any judgment on what is or isn't. But
Yeah.
the only way I personally learned that was through experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the fact that, and then they get to experience it and they're like, oh, I shouldn't judge people because you just never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with people's cases too, like one thing that it was a surprise to me. I know both you and I see a lot of people who have like chronic pain,
Hmm.
which is an interesting thing to work with, and they might have multiple diagnoses and those things. And
Totally.
when I was first getting started in my career, like those cases kind of stressed me a bit because
Hmm.
sometimes I wouldn't feel like people were getting better.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that with people who are in difficult situations, oftentimes the length of time that somebody needs to be supported is much greater.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
one of the first things we need to see is that the person starts to be able to relax. Like
Mm.
literally, their nervous system has to start relaxing, and
Yeah.
then that puts them in a parasympathetic state, which allows for more healing.
Hmm.
And now those cases that used to be more difficult for me, I really enjoy because it's like being able to support somebody who's in a healing journey that may not be easy, but
Mm.
knowing like here are some of the roadblocks that are going to happen. It's going to be up and down at the beginning. It often is that way. We need to get you to start holding your adjustments. We need to get your
Yeah.
nervous system to relax, and that's when the healing really kicks into gear.
Yeah. That's so big. And part of my, I guess my talk, like whenever I'm talking to a group or whatnot, I feel like one of the biggest aspects, or yeah, one of the things I always like to bring forward is the idea that like healing isn't really an event, right? It's
Yeah,
this process, and all of the modalities that really support the development of you are process based. They
yeah,
might be, you might do a series of events to help with that, but it's like healing is procedural. You can, or process based. It's like you can have a big shift in a moment, uh,
yeah,
and the integration of that shift occurs over time. And that's where,
mhm,
as a chiropractor or as a healer, it's really the relationship. And I even tell my chiropractic clients, I know you and I are both spiritual guides, but I tell them when we're starting to work together that,
yeah,
you know, we're going to work together, and I'm going to serve more as a guide in helping you through the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows, because that's me serving you. Because if I think it's going to be rainbows and glitter uh and just an upward trend the whole entire time, that's not really consistent with what I typically see and what
yeah,
we experience. There's highs, lows, ups, downs, external challenges and internal challenges that all need to be managed, even though we don't have to be everything for that to that person.
yeah.
Us just simply recognizing that those are the factors that are involved, is a great way to help support people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great way, and it helps put the, person's mind at ease, I think, at the beginning where like, I'll tell people too, like, the first few weeks are often, kinda wonky for people
Yeah,
because if from a chiropractic perspective, if the person's been misaligned for a long period of time,
sure.
once we start putting you in alignment, you're gonna be walking differently, your body's gonna be working differently, the
Yep.
muscles are gonna be engaging differently, your movement patterns will be different, and it might just and then you might be going in between periods of being in alignment versus out of alignment.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a little bit up and down until your body starts to hold the adjustments.
Yeah.
And just that knowledge of sharing, like it's going to be up and down at the beginning. When somebody does have that pain, maybe they have a pain in one hip that they didn't have before
Mm,
a
yeah.
week in because they're walking differently. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, they Dr. Bill told me about this. Dr. Sean told me this might happen. and they're
Yeah.
not stressing about it. They're not anxious.
Yeah. Well, and I
Mm.
think even that teaching point very early on, um, one of the challenges is most people don't view symptoms as healing ever. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
experiencing symptoms while you're healing is totally normal, and we
Yeah.
get that. Like that's the thing is most people actually do understand that. It's just
Yeah.
hasn't really been revealed to them. Like the idea now that 30 years ago, nobody was like, "Oh, I'm quitting sugar." Like
Yeah.
how often did you hear that? But weekly now, you hear people that are like, I got off sugar.
Yeah.
And if you ask them what that process was like for the first couple days, you've done it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's not pleasant, and you actually realize how addicted you are to so many things. I've
Yeah.
definitely experienced this, and it doesn't feel great. If you do a fast for a couple days, it doesn't feel great. But those symptoms don't mean you're not healing. They actually represent the healing.
Yeah.
And that's true. Really, our body's awareness of getting our attention in many different ways is the symptom. So, uh,
Mm.
and people do know that it's just
Yeah.
not talked about or revealed, or
Yeah.
trusted,
Yeah.
really. You know?
Yeah, and we live in this world that, or we live in this Western world where there's this model of wanting to suppress every symptom.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a medication for everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's just take this so you don't have symptoms, and then
Yeah.
you're healthy. And we know it doesn't quite work that way. That those symptoms are very often expressions from the body of something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I see this with like emotional and spiritual pain too, with people as well as physical. Like
Yeah.
the pain, there's an opportunity in the pain. There's a silver
Yeah.
lining in the pain.
Yeah.
My chiropractor had an injury recently, and he was been in a lot of pain.
Mm.
And we're good friends, and he was in like 10 out of 10 pain, so
Wow.
severe pain. And he's like, I had so many realizations when I was in that state of pain about how life is short,
Uh,
about the things that I haven't gotten done, that I need to take action on and want to
yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And the pain can really be a huge window for people. It's like when that pain comes to the surface, whether it's emotional or spiritual or physical,
Mm.
it gives us this opportunity to really question, like, what do we wish was different? What
Yeah.
do I need to take action on? What do I need to shift? And that's one of the coolest parts about being a healer, I think, is that we're doing that for ourselves, and then
Yeah.
we're doing that for our clients on a regular basis.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I love that so much because when you're in that state of pain or sickness, and I had a lot of sickness this winter. We talked
Yeah.
about it, but this was my daughter's first year of school, and like I always heard people say that, and I was like, oh, I take care of myself, whatever. But
Mhm.
it was hard, and once I ended up sick, I felt like I was low level, and I got everything that if she came home with something, I was experiencing it, and it was almost like I never got through it. And I definitely hit a breaking point a little bit ago, and in that I was like, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And the reality is, maybe it doesn't happen to that extent. There's always things I can do to be healthier, but the other end of it, it's like, oh my gosh, I realize how much energy I need to do the
Yeah.
work that I
Yeah.
do. I don't live a natural life,
Yeah.
so I can't always rely on natural ways to keep performing. And I also had a really healthy perspective of what people can go through, and
Yeah.
the seasons of healing. Like there's no set time limit on it, right? If
Yeah.
it's an emotional thing, it could be just a week, a day, a couple moments. If it's a physical thing, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Some of these, it could be years. And that's the reality. Sometimes when a chiropractic client comes to us, the honest truth is it could take years for you to have any stability in this situation.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to put the limits. You've seen
Yeah.
everything at this point. So it is a delicate balance of being honest and then also being realistic to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's and you have to like have a wide variety of experience to start getting that wisdom, right? And then knowing
Yeah.
what's correct in each situation. Um, this past week, I had a challenge where I told you about this
Yeah.
off the podcast, but I had a client come in, a new client who was brought in by one of my amazing clients who's been with me for a long time, and the man was in extreme pain, and had a lot of suffering.
Hmm.
And I was just really compassionate with him. He had come straight from the ER due to pain. And it was a really tough case. And the he ended up missing his appointment the next day. And it turns out he had a fall and ended up passing away. And it was something that was like very those times are just very difficult as a practitioner, which was one of the reasons like I reached out to you
Yeah.
and a couple other people as well, because it was like, oh, like these people were caring for them, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
they're in our energy field in a
Yeah.
sense. It's like my mind was on this guy. He was in so much pain. So it was I think it was Monday. I was going to bed. I was like, I wonder how he's doing. I hope he's doing okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it can be really difficult when people uh, get in these extreme situations. Most of the time, it's not death, and
Right.
but these things happen, and life can be really hard. There can be a lot of suffering, or people have severe injuries.
Yeah.
So as a healer, somebody who cares for other people, that can be really difficult to see. Um, and at the same time, like you do everything you can to support these people. And at the very least, what we can do is bring in more hope and compassion and light.
Yeah. Well, and I think even you sharing that story, it shows the diversity amongst healing situations. There's healing in everything from how we come into the world and healing from that journey, and then like leaving the world is and everything in between, from like I want to be proactive, preventative, to I'm in a hole and I need to climb out of it,
Yeah,
to I'm thriving and I want to keep thriving. There's all these different levels, and it really comes down to this awareness of where we are, what's keeping us back or what's holding us back, and what are the options available. And I think that's probably another motivation for this show is breaking out of that, like only the healing modalities I know are only the ones that are accessible.
yeah,
But with that being said, I think one of the other challenges I see is people trying to do everything all the time.
yeah,
This doing to fix everything, and
yeah,
that's really becoming, I would say, one of the biggest problems is we just have
yeah,
so much information that it's hard for people to. They're like, I just want to know what it is. I just want to know what to do. I just want,
yeah,
and they keep filling it in with like, oh, nutrition
yeah,
and energy healing uh
yeah,
and trying to like shotgun everything at it, and all the while they need to like get back to basics in many ways, and the mind is
yeah,
usually racing through that process.
yeah. And there's this need we as humans often have, like I think the vast majority of people have this, where it's like a wanting to control the
Yeah.
different experiences.
Yeah.
And sometimes like life, the divine spirit, there's just surprises that get thrown in. And
Yeah.
pain can be one of those things where it's like you experience intense pain, and you're just like, I don't want to experience this anymore. How can I shut it off? I'm going to do everything that
Yeah.
exists to shut it off. But what if that pain's there to open up your awareness? If it's there to help you realize something, maybe maybe it's something that is going to really help you in some way. Like if you and I hadn't had the pains that we had, we would have never been chiropractors.
No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we wouldn't have been able to start to look at ourselves deeper, I would have never
Mm.
gone, further with it. And yeah,
Yeah.
but it is such a challenge. You can see it in people. Well, this is how
Yeah.
I describe it. It's like I can see it in a person. And maybe it's one of the more challenging people to work with is the ones that really are like trying to have also a physical solution
Yeah.
to all of their quote problems or their
Yeah.
healing, and we're not just physical beings. So
Yeah.
you can probably see this too. The more you work with people and their energy is like we try to fix everything with this physical solution, and if it's not the supplement, if it's not the movement, if it's not the diet, it couldn't possibly be that you're carrying around emotion over time. I mean, because
Yeah.
that energy gets reflected in the person, and it stays and it gets stuck, because I've seen it, and I don't even know if I fully believed it. But
Yeah.
when I first started doing energy healing, you do some work and they're like, "Oh, that low back pain I was having is totally gone. Oh my gosh, that relationship I couldn't get past, that was
Yeah.
easy." And it was also creating all this digestive stuff within me. So,
Yeah.
it's not so simple. It's not so complicated either.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
very paradoxical relationship, healing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's also that discernment too, because sometimes there are moments where we really need to surrender to the process.
Yeah.
Like maybe you get sick and it's like the universe's way of slowing you down a little bit. You've been going
Yeah.
too much and you need to take some downtime and recharge.
Yeah.
But there are other times where it's like, no, you actually need to make a shift because this pain is coming up, this problem is coming up because there's like you're not seeing something, or
Yeah.
you need to take care of your body differently.
Yeah.
Like one of the challenges I had was there was a period of time where I tried to be vegan,
Mm.
and for me it was like it was devastating for my body, and it was maybe like I was vegan for like 6 months, but for another year and a half on I was like more vegetarian,
Yeah.
and for my body it just like didn't work. And the whole time I was like, maybe I'm detoxing or, doing
Yeah.
these different things. And I just end up, my muscle, like putting on fat, my muscle mass and my strength was going down. I was having all these issues. And then I end up having a steak, and we went out to dinner with one of our teachers. I had a steak in my first time in like 3 years, and I felt so good after eating that steak. I slept so well that night that I went to the grocery store like the next day, bought 2 more steaks and had another. And I like, and my body was just like, it was healing. Like I wasn't listening to my body because I had this
Yeah.
box of I want things to work this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for me, and for somebody else, it might work, but for me, it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, part of the challenge is like,
Yeah.
there's so much information where somebody's had the opposite effect, and
Yeah.
that's quote the way, but we're so diverse. Like we're all so
Absolutely.
diverse, because I think nutrition is one of those things that people really, there's certain principles out there that make sense. Like, even from a research perspective, anybody's that like, plants and fruits and vegetables are killing you. It's like, well, I mean, that's not really supported by any like research that's
Yeah.
out there. But can we all agree like things that are one ingredient are probably better.
Yeah.
And then finding that works for you. And that's part of what the experiment is you have to like learn yourself. Cause I'm the same way. I did the vegan thing twice,
Yeah.
and for 3 months I was like, wow, I feel so much better, but it was probably the detoxification. And then I wasn't. And there's been times during my life where things have worked better. Oh, I'm lactose intolerant and now I'm not, because you're
Yeah.
getting a new physical body.
Yeah.
Your energy is new at different phases and stages throughout life. So it's like an ever evolving process of looking at it. But yeah, I think that's the challenges. Everyone knows the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the health world, right? Lots of
Yeah.
gurus that know the way.
Oh, yeah, it's and on Instagram or TikTok now, it's like there's, for every like funny reel, there's another reel about somebody being a TikTok expert.
Yeah, so it's confusing. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
confusing. It's kind of funny. Like but anybody that speaks
Yeah.
in like absolutes, like this is the only way, it's just bull. And I mean, even in
Yeah.
chiropractic, it's like I practice upper cervical. Like it's not the end all be all. There's other people
Yeah.
that get well in other ways. And any practitioner that's like mad about somebody healing through another vehicle is like, that never made sense to me. Like when my client goes to their doctor and is like, I don't know why, but my allergies got better. And the doctor's like, well, that's silly, and it's like,
Yeah.
aren't you happy?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they got better and they're happy about
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal,
Yeah.
So I think there's tons to navigate through, and I think that's where information can hurt people because it pulls them outside of their own experience, which is a much better teacher than surfing the internet to find your own validation, right?
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, we all can be our own best guidance in a
Totally.
sense where like not from the human mind, but the more you're able to connect with your heart, the soul, your intuition, you can catch these things a lot sooner. So there doesn't have to be like so much getting off track. So many people, like, we get lost in this world of the human mind and thoughts, and it's a useful tool, but it's not a very good navigation system.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
That-
really good. Yeah.
I-
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
One of the analogies I use with my energy clients a lot is that, like, use the mind like you would a program on an operating system, like on your computer, but really the navigation, the compass should be the heart, should be the soul. Let that help you bring clarity about a different situation, and then use your mind to like pave the road, if you will, to help you with the action steps and those things. But don't let your mind just pull you in all these different directions, and then your emotions and heart follow, because oftentimes you'll end up in the wrong place.
Yes. No, I love that. I think we should wrap up on that. I was gonna be
Sounds
like,
good.
"Hey, what's your final thoughts?" But that's a perfect final thought. I mean,
Yeah.
really not just continually focusing on the mind, but really starting to explore. So
Yeah.
fantastic. Awesome. Well, we really greatly enjoyed sharing this episode and really diving into all of the different various challenges, probably many we didn't even discuss today. So thanks for being here, and we look forward to speaking and talking and exploring with you soon.
Thank you all so much. We're looking forward to talking with you next week.